Islamophobia and the distrust of Muslims is on the rise. We'll be arguing that this is down to poor media representation on behalf of the media. We'll also dive into how ideas of Orientalism plays a massive role in creating a narrative that media outlets often subscribe to. Join us as we talk to members of the public and scholars on such a polarizing issue.
Since the attacks of 9/11, many people have tended to engage in negative and hostile behaviour towards Muslims, categorising them as intolerant, misogynistic, violent or cruel, strange and different, according to Whittaker 2002, which is largely the result of Islamophobic media coverage.
When the word Muslim is said, what do you think in your head?
I think. I don't have bad views myself, but I know that other people from the media can be given bad views.
He also found that in tabloid newspapers, especially articles featuring the word Muslim in the Daily Mail has risen by 322% and in the Sun by 658%. This high percentage increase, in addition to flashy and fear-mongering headlines, attracts more uneducated readers who often source their opinions on Islam from newspapers like The Sun, and it is when the media's opinion on these matters reach a large audience that such discourses are cemented and popularised.
I think they're just, a majority people who practice a major religion.
And how do you think they're portrayed in the media?
Oh, in the media, yeah, that's a different story.
Biased?
Terrorist?
Everything is blamed on them.
I don't feel like the Muslim community is represented correctly in the media because of the types of scholars and speakers that the media does bring in and gives a platform to, and that's mainly because of the agenda that the media has. The media bring on scholars and speakers which hold a very minority opinion and don't actually represent the opinions of the majority Muslim community in the UK. That means is that they show Islam to be completely what it's not, and not what the majority of the Muslims actually hold. And that means that the UK population, they believe that minority opinion, and then by association, our general Muslim practices, like for example, going to the mosque to pray, they are held to be extremists too, just because of the platform that these extremist speakers were given on the media.
Non-Muslims do not get branded as terrorists, and their religion is barely a mentioned factor, but instead, more sensitive issues of mental health are used to justify their actions and the failure of the state to help them. In 1978, Edward Said coined the term Orientalism. Islamophobia also has its roots in Orientalism. This is the idea that those in Western Europe were labelled as us and depicted as civil and legitimate, and non-Western cultures such as the Orient were labelled as them and were seen to be either feared or controlled, as they were viewed as strange, uncivilized and different. This fear has repeated itself with the cultural divide between the West and Islam based off different values, resulting in a divide which has led to a fear that has been heavily publicised in the media.
When we get changes in communications and technology, we get different ways of representing the other, and in general, they become quicker and they become more far-reaching. So within seconds now, through a newscast or through electronic media or through a social media platform, you could have someone like Donald Trump retweeting what are anti-Islamic videos saying that all Muslims are responsible for a violent act, even though the video itself doesn't actually show a Muslim. He can say that's what it does because he's retweeting what someone in Britain from a far-right group has said. So that sense of being connected, that I can grab a piece of, quote, information, which may or may not be real from any part of the world, I can then mobilize it to reinforce my view of the other. Certain media outlets who have a lot of money, a lot of resources, and who have the will to do this can spread a very divisive message about us and the other. Muslims are, of course, whether they're inside or outside the country, a threat. So even as media has offered us the opportunity to try to, quote, understand each other because it gives us access to more information potentially, that tool, that vehicle of the quicker media platforms means it's just as easy to try to distinguish us from the other and to try to feed on sort of that division and power, that hierarchy of power, which says, you know what, we're better than you are. what you have to do, in my opinion, is you have to take the tools of media and you have to use it for the dialogue and understanding that can supposedly break down Orientalism.
Having more Muslim voices in newspapers, Telegraph, Guardian, Sunday Times, whatever, and just getting your voices across. I mean, Facebook and Twitter is good.
So you have to get literate and not just rely on Fox News or even on a New York Times, as good as that is, to just tell you what is happening. You've got to learn. And then you've got to discuss it with others, right? You know, we have the opportunity with the internet to make contact with people who are not just next door to us, but in places that are far away that we may never have seen before. But you got to make the effort to make those connections. And that, to me, is sort of the possibility that is always there. That if enough people believe in the opportunity for connection and dialogue, that this supposed class of civilizations, which has been forced upon us by supposed intellectuals like Samuel Huntington, that doesn't have to come about.
On the whole, problems of Islamophobia as well as a popularised anti-Muslim narrative have undeniably increased with the help of biased news and media coverage. Although terrorism and Islamophobia can be seen as two sides of the same coin, they shouldn't be used to justify such historic Orientalism, which has been played out over centuries toward different groups of others. Despite this repetition of history implemented by ever-increasing dissemination of information over the internet, genuine bottom-up conversations as well as increased representation of Muslims in mainstream media can help to better understand those labelled as others, leading to the most accurate accounts and information which can help to tackle false and manipulated news which further add to the problem rather than the solution.